streets of Linton Heights in the summer heat. In the suffocating haze of late summer heat, the streets of Linton Heights never felt safe. An unwritten rule dictated that people of color, particularly black men, had to walk with their heads down, their voices soft, and their footsteps measured, lest they become targets in a system that saw them as less than human. It was a small town on the edge of bigger cities, a place where people knew each other's names but not their real stories. In this town, where suspicion often hung heavier than the humidity, Jamal Carter had learned early on that you had to fight for every inch of space you occupied. He wasn't the kind to let anyone intimidate him, but his quiet dignity and unwavering resilience didn't stop him from becoming a target for the wrong reasons. Jamal Carter, undercover FBI agent. Jamal wasn't just another young black man walking down a street, minding his own business. He was, in truth, an undercover FBI agent assigned to investigate the corruption within Linton Heights Police Department. The town was built on whispered secrets and power struggles, and at the heart of it all, a police force that operated with the same sense of entitlement that had plagued generations before them. Yet Jamal never allowed himself to forget the cost of his mission. Beneath his well-tailored suit and stoic demeanor, he carried the weight of representing every single black life that had been broken by the very system he was now trying to expose. Captain Derek Moore at a neighborhood barbecue. His assignment wasn't supposed to be this complicated. It had started with a slow burn, collecting evidence, watching, listening. But soon, his presence had drawn the attention of Captain Derek Moore, a man whose reputation stretched farther than the law should have allowed. Moore was the kind of officer who showed up to every neighborhood barbecue and was praised as the good guy by most. But the more Jamal observed, the clearer it became that Moore wasn't interested in protecting and serving. He was interested in power, influence, and exploiting the very community he was sworn to protect. First confrontation, outside the cafe. One warm afternoon, as Jamal stood outside a local cafe, a familiar patrol car cruised by. Jamal hadn't done anything wrong. He never did. But something about Moore's gaze as he passed told him that the captain had noticed him. The game was changing. The threat. Jamal felt the shift in the air the moment Moore parked his car. He recognized the way the captain stepped out, firm, purposeful, almost theatrical. The gleam of his polished badge reflected the sun as he adjusted his belt, the silhouette of authority in every step he took. Jamal could feel the prickling of sweat on the back of his neck as the captain's gaze locked onto him, sizing him up. "Hey, Carter!" Moore called out, his voice loud enough for the entire block to hear. "How's the day treating you?" Jamal's pulse quickened, but he didn't show it. He gave a small nod. "Can't complain, Captain." Moore smirked, his eyes narrowing ever so slightly. "Funny. I've been hearing some complaints about you. Folks say you've been stirring things up. They're starting to wonder if you're really who you say you are." The words hung heavy in the air. Moore wasn't talking about Jamal's reputation as an upstanding citizen. He was talking about something far more dangerous. His hidden identity. The captain wasn't just challenging him. He was taunting him, testing the waters. Moore's eyes glinted with a cold curiosity. "You see, Carter," Moore continued, his voice dripping with subtle venom, "around here, we take care of our own. We don't need people like you questioning the system. You'd be wise to remember that." Jamal took a deep breath, his mind racing for a way to pivot, to deflect. But the threat in Moore's words wasn't subtle. It was sharp and intentional. Moore was setting a trap, and Jamal could feel it. There was no way to escape his gaze, no way to back out of this encounter without making it worse. The weight of it all pressed down on him. For a moment, Jamal considered walking away, but he didn't. Instead, he straightened his shoulders, lifted his chin, and met Moore's stare head-on. "I'm not here to stir trouble, Captain. I'm just living my life, just like anyone else around here." The captain's lips twisted into a grin that didn't reach his eyes. He stepped closer, his breath warm and heavy on Jamal's skin. "Well, I suggest you remember your place, because around here, we know how to handle people who forget. With that, Moore turned and walked away, leaving behind a quiet, menacing promise. Jamal stood there for a long while, watching the captain's retreating figure, a mixture of unease and resolve settling in his chest. He couldn't help but feel the weight of what was coming next. Moore knew something. He didn't know exactly what, but he knew enough to start planting the seeds of doubt. Jamal's worst fear was that Moore was beginning to see through his cover, to sense that he wasn't just another black man living on the margins of Linton Heights. Moore was playing a dangerous game, one that could expose Jamal's mission and everything he'd worked for if he wasn't careful. But there was no turning back. The truth had to come to light, even if it meant he had to confront Moore directly. He was ready to face whatever came next. Little did Jamal know, the game had just begun. Psychological warfare. The next few weeks felt like a ticking time bomb, each moment stretching into the next, the tension between Jamal and Captain Moore growing ever more palpable. Jamal kept his distance, avoiding direct confrontations, but the pressure was building. It was no longer about quietly gathering evidence, it was about survival. Moore had made it clear that he wasn't going to back off. His behavior became erratic, suspicious. He began to push boundaries, fabricating petty reasons to pull Jamal over, questioning him in front of others, using his authority to exert psychological pressure. It was clear now. Moore wasn't just trying to intimidate Jamal, he was trying to break him. Jamal walking home at sunset. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the streetlights flickered to life, Jamal found himself walking back to his apartment after a long day of surveillance. He was mentally drained, his body tense with the knowledge that every step could lead to a confrontation. The sudden screech of tires echoed through the empty streets. Jamal didn't have to look to know who it was. The final confrontation. The blue and white patrol car pulled up next to him, and Moore's silhouette appeared once again. The captain stepped out, this time with an almost triumphant look on his face, as though he knew he had Jamal cornered. "You know, Carter," Moore began, his voice thick with self-satisfaction, "I've been doing a little digging. Funny thing is, not everyone in town seems to know who you really are. But I do." Jamal's revelation. Jamal's stomach churned. His worst fears were coming true. Moore had figured it out. The captain was in possession of something, some thread that tied him back to the bureau. The jig was up. "You've been playing the game for a while, haven't you?" Moore continued, circling Jamal like a predator eyeing his prey. "Trying to expose us for what? Corruption? And what? You thought you could just come in here and we wouldn't notice?" Jamal's mind raced. His heart beat fast, the pressure mounting in his chest. He had no choice now. It was time to either reveal everything or lose it all. "Captain," Jamal said, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him, "you don't know what you're dealing with. If you want a war, you're going to get one. But this time, it's not going to end in your favor." Moore sneered. "Is that a threat?" "Call it what you want," Jamal replied. "But you're about to find out who's been watching you." Jamal holding the cards. In that moment, the captain realized that he had underestimated Jamal, underestimated the strength, the resolve, the quiet power that came with being black in a world built on oppression. Moore had thought he could frame an innocent black man, use the system against him for likes and recognition, but what he didn't know was that Jamal was far more than a target. He was a force, and the truth, no matter how deeply buried, would always rise to the surface. The captain's smug expression faltered for the briefest moment, and Jamal saw it. Fear. The first hint of realization that he had made a grave mistake. The streets of Linton Heights had witnessed many wrongs, but this time, there was a reckoning. Moore didn't know it yet, but the game was already over. As Jamal's phone buzzed with the confirmation of backup from the bureau, he knew that the final chapter of this story was unfolding. It was no longer about survival. It was about justice. The time for playing games was over. And this time, Jamal Carter was the one holding the cards.